All right, so one of the first things that I learned when I got my Peace Corps package was Bulgaria is one of the only countries in the world where this means yes, and this means no. And of course, immediately I went on YouTube and I researched Bulgaria, I'm so obsessed with it. And then I get there in May of 2009, and everyone was doing it at the airport, everyone was doing it at the hotels where we stayed. And it took me a while to actually get used to it. And I would go to the market, and someone would ask me if I wanted tomatoes, and I would like nod, but I wouldn't get my tomatoes. Or like if I was at someone's house and I was 3 sheets to the wind, and they would ask me if I wanted another pour of the alcohol, I would like do this, but I would get another pour. And so it took me a while to get used to that, but eventually I did. And there's many stories about why Bulgaria uses these gestures, opposing to the Western ones that we use. They were under Ottoman rule for 500 years, and so whenever the Bulgarians would revolt, and one of the Ottoman soldiers would capture a Bulgarian revolter, they would put a knife this way, laid this way under their chin right here, and they would ask them, where are your other revolters, do you know? And the Bulgarians kind of made up this code in order not to lie to themselves because they are so patriotic. So whenever one of them gets caught and they were asked this question, they would say no. First of all, in order not to lie to themselves, because this is kind of a code that they took as part of their culture, and also not to pierce themselves, because if they did that, if they said yes, then they would get pierced. So this is the general kind of accepted story of why Bulgarians do this. And so 500 years later, they still do it. And anyways, so I get to Bulgaria, and I have this placement interview with with one of the people over there, and they said, what do you want? And I said, I just want to be close to people, close to a volunteer. That's all I want. I don't care how small, I don't care how big, I just want to be close to a volunteer. So anyways, we get a placement day comes, and it's kind of this big, and they have this big map of Bulgaria. And Bulgaria is like this, right? And there was one site right at the corner, right at the thumb, we call the thumb of Bulgaria right here, that was so far away from everyone else. So everyone was mocking, everyone was like, oh, haha to the person who's gonna be there, they're not gonna see anyone, they're gonna like ET like right away. Early terminate. And then so they're calling the names and which sites we're going to, and then of course me, the biggest heckler, they say Bregovo, which is the village that I was in for 3 years, and they called my name, and I was like unsure like where it was, and then someone was like doing this in the air, and I was like, F, that's me. And then so I like dejectedly walk over there, and then so we have lunch, and of course I'm like complaining to all my Peace Corps volunteers, like I'm so far away. And then after lunch we get there, and they had the counterparts in the places that we were on the map. And then so I walk over and I see my counterpart, this black hair, she had long black hair, very Eastern European. I'm walking towards her, and she's kind of like looking like who is a volunteer is going to be placed in her sight. And then I was like, hi. She looks at me like with surprise. And I said, I'm your volunteer. And then like we kind of like gave each other the awkward hug. And then we asked each other, we had like, it was kind of like pillow talk, like very small talk, and like, what's your name? When were you born? Of course, Bulgarians ask, what's your zodiac sign? And I told them my zodiac sign because they're really big on that. And then during that counterpart conference, we exchanged numbers, and the counterparts were like on one side of the room, the volunteers were on the other side of the room. And I just like hated her. And I think initially because I hated the place that I was in. I did not like where I was. I didn't get the only thing that I asked for, which is to be close to the closest volunteer. And I was 6 hours away from the closest volunteer. And so, and I just hated her for that. I needed to place this hatred somewhere. And I remember at one point I was sitting down, someone was giving a presentation, and she texts me, and she was like right there. And then she goes, "Hi, how are you doing?" Even though we like talked like 5 minutes before. And it just like creeped me out. And you know, in all hindsight, she was just being a very loving person. But you know, she would put her arms around me and I'll just be like, "Oh, no." And then so I go back to my host family and I tell them, "I'm so far away, I hate my counterpart, I hate where I'm going." And they're like, "Oh yeah, it's not really good over there." And it was the poorest, least populated part of Bulgaria, hence all of the European Union. And then so I tell my program manager, I said, I don't want to be here. And she goes, just go, try it out when you go on your site visit. So I go to my site visit, like desolate, like empty. And then she had this adopted daughter, and she invited me to her house. And she was being really pushy, like, "This is my daughter, Denitsa, you should meet her." And I couldn't tell her, that I was gay. But for Bulgarians, especially in that part of the country, gay is super feminine and being a lesbian is super masculine. So me being just like not saying anything, probably she couldn't tell. And then of course the daughter was kind of like going on, I don't know if it was a plan or whatever. And I just felt super awkward and I just did not like it. And then so I complained again. I said, "This is what happened. She's been being really pushy about her daughter, but I can't really say anything." And they were like, "Just deal with it." I dealt with it. And then so I get there, and of course people were starting to make racial slurs against me, and she would tell me, "They said this about you." But I bitched at them back. And then I was like, "Thank you." And then, slowly, and then I think the thing that made me really realize that I really like this woman was my first winter. It was the worst winter since 20 years. And I missed my train. I missed my bus because the train was so late. And I remember calling her and I said that I'm not gonna make the last bus to the village. I might have to sleep on the streets or I'll sleep on a train, I don't know. And she goes, "Oh, okay, don't worry, I'll make something work." And then my train arrives and she calls me and she goes, "The bus is waiting for you." And I go, "What? It's 2 hours later." And then she goes, "But hurry, they're gonna leave soon." So I remember doing hurdles over these snow mounds. And then I asked her later, "What did you do?" And she said, I called the municipality of transportation in the region and told you that you are my volunteer and that you need to wait for him." And that was when it got to me. And so, and we slowly grew our relationship, and we came to realize that, I would know when she's upset, and she would do this, do this, and this is kind of okay in Bulgarian. And then so I extended another 2 years after my 27 months.
Wow.
And I think in hindsight, because of this woman, and because there was something that I could not tell her, I knew everything about her, she felt like she knew everything about me, but I couldn't tell her. I remember one of the volunteers was able to come out to their counterpart, and I was so jealous, but I couldn't do it because of all the things that I knew that would make problems for her and her family. And so I remember my last day, I extended my 4th year in another place in Bulgaria, and I visited. And I had all my bags, and I stayed the weekend there, and I was leaving in 2 hours. And I ate lunch at her place, And all the men left the table, and I told her in Bulgarian that I want, like, there was this connection between us that she felt like I wanted to tell her something. And of course, I was definitely giving her all that body language. And I gave her this hug, waiting for the bus, and she kind of like slowly backed away, and then she did this, and then I left. And I didn't really reflect on this, but in my mind, maybe I'm just rationalizing it, I'd like to think that that was her saying that she was okay with me being gay.